Ah, I thought for a moment my machine was turning dirty with me. Pat, explain to the multitude, would you, why it was that although we did a podcast on Friday, it didn't see the light of day?
With a bit of respect, I haven't a clue. But as usual, technology, Jude, can let you down. You say it's recorded, you feel it's recorded, but when you go to convert the file, you can't find the file to convert it to put it up as a podcast. Hey, that's life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're too polite, Pat. You're too polite to say I made a balls of it. But I've got the stage with technology where I don't have the patience to struggle with it that I once had. Anyway, we're
Yeah.
praying cross fingers and we urge our multitude of viewers and listeners to light a candle and pray hard that this thing will be preserved. Okay, a lot of people are giving prayers of thanksgiving throughout Ireland today, and some are giving less than full-throated thanksgiving. There was an election, Pat, you may have noticed. Um,
Yes.
the Irish Times has a headline in its editorial. It says the Irish Times view on the election result. The people vote out the opposition. And it notes that the electorate have bucked the international anti-incumbent trend.
Yeah.
Would that seem to you a summation, a proper summation of what happened on Friday?
Dude, here's the thing. You can read statistics, you can use them any way that you want, and there's a certain element of truth. But 60% of the people of Ireland didn't vote for the parties that are going to be in government. That's a fact. You know, and all the parties now are roughly on 20%. And
Hmm.
if I'm not 100% certain of this, but you need to check it out. I think both Fine Gael and Fine Gael are actually down in percentage terms. And
But
in
ever so
regards to the
slightly,
last,
Pat, ever so slightly.
ever so slightly, but Fine Gael, I think, only got slightly more percentage wise than Fine Gael, and yet
Hmm.
they're going to probably end up with 10 seats more. And the other thing as well is the other factor, I suppose, that I should throw out there. Uh, I remember we had this discussion before. I think the biggest issue by far for Sinn Féin in this election, and it's the one I think it's caused the most problems, is immigration.
Hmm.
Jude, they do not put refugee centres or asylum seeker centres in Ballsbridge or in the sort of the leafy suburbs of Cork. They put them in the working class areas of of working class estates
Yeah.
and so on. You'll find them out in Tala, and you'll find them out in wee parts of Donegal and so on.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you won't
Hmm.
find them in the leafy suburbs all around where the stockbroker belts are and where the movers or shakers of Irish industry are. You're not
Well,
going to find. So that was a big, big issue for Sinn Féin. And the fact is, Jude, and see in the final couple of weeks,
hmm.
Sinn Féin I heard one of the guys on it. He's obviously a Cork man. He said it was like a hurling match. He says we wish there had been another week. He says because the campaign was definitely running our way. Sinn Féin came from nowhere back up again.
Yeah, that's right. It depends on where you start, as many people said. If you start with when they were getting 34, 35% in terms of opinion polls about 2 years ago, then this is a really bad election. But if you start with where they were, say, 2 months ago, then they made a really good bit. In fact, it's very striking. They have actually split. They may not be the largest party, but they have split. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Fianna Fáil may have run away, but Sinn Féin second. However, I think they'd be disappointed. Do you think, Pat, that any of that could be attributed, as some commentators are saying, to Mary Lou McDonald?
What do you mean?
Well, they're saying
I think
some of them are saying it's because her leadership that they wouldn't shouldn't be in this position.
it could be all the way around, Jude.
Hmm.
I think Mary Lou's brought them back up again. During the election campaign, I was watching the leaders debate. Mary
Hmm.
Lou was by far the most impressive. Like
Hmm.
Harris and Meal Martin were spewing out statistics and almost gagging. Mary Lou was, I think you actually said it yourself. She was very relaxed. Was if she was having a conversation with Miriam O'Callaghan and Shira McInerney. She came across as very confident, very competent, and so on. And I think that was one of the strong points of the showing of Sinn Féin in the last couple of months. Now, Mary Lou did have very serious health problems
Yeah.
about a year ago. And
Hmm.
I think possibly the party there was nobody at the wheel maybe and so on. So I think, but I think she's back in full groove now, and I think things are moving up.
Mm.
And
Well, you
I'm going to
see,
repeat it again, Jude. The thing, the big issue where Sinn Féin lost out this
yeah,
time as compared to the last time was immigration.
immigration. Well, you notice whenever Mary Lou was elected, it was on the third count.
Yeah,
And she didn't bring in another Sinn Féin candidate along with her.
yeah,
That was kind of
yeah,
surprising because there was quite a few instances, no less in the case of Donegal, where Pierce Doherty had the
yeah.
biggest vote together in the
Yeah,
entire
and he brought in
state,
Paddy
and he
McDonald
brought
was
in Paddy
elected in the second
McLaughlin
count.
with
Yeah,
him. And there
yeah,
are several other instances of sort of major names among the
mhm,
hierarchy of Sinn Féin bringing in one or even two other colleagues as a
yeah,
result of their
yeah,
popularity. So, would you make anything of that? The fact that although I agree with you, she is a consummate. She is a terrific campaigner. She knows there's a
yeah,
warmth there and an ease which is streets ahead of either Micheál Martin or Simon Harris. But
yeah.
that didn't translate into really sweeping the board in terms of the actual votes cast.
No, and I take your point totally. Pierce Doherty, I think Jeepers Watts, he was way ahead. He was elected on the first count. Patrick McLaughlin, come on, I think, Jude, I'm not 100% certain this, but I think Sinn Féin got about somewhere about 42% of the vote in
Yeah.
Donegal, which is unbelievable,
Hmm.
and so. And by the way, the other thing, Finn Gael has lost. Joe McHugh, who I happen to know, Finn Gael, he wasn't standing, and Finn Gael have lost a seat. Now, I'm open to correction, but I think it's the last time Finn Gael didn't have a seat, and Donegal was about somewhere about the 1930s, and
Uh-huh.
so on. And see, Stephen Donnelly has lost his seat as a
Aye.
minister down in Wicklow, and
Yeah.
Charlie McConlogue, the Fianna Fáil Minister for Agriculture, didn't just about got in,
Just about got there. Just about got there.
just about got there, yeah,
Now,
and
Pat,
so on. So, Jude, I think there's see when all the analysis is done and so on,
yeah,
Jude,
yeah.
there's a whole lot of factors at play here. But Jude, let's get this clear. See this last while, the economy has been on a trajectory northwards in the sense that it's bringing in billions. They got that 14 billion from what do you call it, Microsoft or whatever it is. They were able to give out a budget that one for everybody in the audience. There was all
Yeah,
sorts.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no matter what anybody says. See, some of the pundits are saying that you can't buy an election. Not bloody half you can.
Well, they had a
No
go at
matter
it,
what
Pat.
anybody says. What's that, Jude?
I say they had a go at buying people's votes, but it didn't quite work because there's Fianna Fáil. They were well, I suppose Fianna Fáil were equally. Somehow I identified it as being Fine Gael giving away all these goodies,
Sure,
but of
hold on
course
a
Fianna
minute.
Fáil
You
were in
can't buy an
government with them.
election. Aren't they going to be back into government with more seats? Of course,
Hmm.
you can buy an election.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you this. I just don't want to leave this until we just sort it. Um, supposing tomorrow, or in a
Yeah.
month's time, Mary Lou decided she'd pack it in and Pierce Doherty was the leader. Do you think that would be a positive move for Sinn Féin or would it be a backward move?
I think it's a good combination what they have now. I really do. Pierce
But what
is a
about if
very intense.
if there was a change? Would that
No,
be
Jude, I'm not. No, Jude, right to answer your question, no, I'm not sure it would be. Because right here's I'll tell you, I've met Mary Lou McDonald, not sort of on a personal one-to-one setting, but I've been
hmm,
on the company at which she's been in, and I've seen her in action.
yeah,
She's very warm, very approachable, very personable. Pierce Doherty is, I would say, almost a sort of, I'll use this term, almost intellectual of the party.
hmm,
He's very intense. He doesn't do small talk. He's a policy man. He's an apparatchik. He goes through the
yes,
detail
yes,
and all the rest of it and so on.
uh-huh.
And he's almost the sort of the what would you say, the intellectual pragmatist of the
Hmm,
party. So
hmm.
on. Mary Lou does this the warm and cuddly, but Jude, that's worked well for them. The Mary Lou has softened the image of Sinn Féin
It
big time in the
has,
Republic of Ireland.
it
Dude,
has.
let's get this clear. All these people are whinging. Sinn Féin 25 years ago were on 2% in the Republic of Ireland.
That's right. Yeah, I remember it well. Uh, although
Mm.
they're still not happy with him. The Irish Times, as we say, says the people vote out the opposition. So that, in a sense, is putting the boot into Sinn Féin. And there's another
Of course it is.
article in the paper. I forgot it's by somebody or another. It's a woman. But the heading is Election Result is not the straightforward success story Sinn Féin are selling. To which I would reply, what the hell do you expect them to do? Every
Yeah.
party tries to present the state they're in as being well. In some ways, it's a good
Yeah.
thing because we are.
No, so we should fit. Oh, we didn't do as well. Great party. What do expect? By the way, the one thing we should say, you have to give him massive credit, is Micheál Martin. He's basically pulled off a miracle.
He has.
Like
He brought them
Jude,
back from the verge of extinction.
Fianna Fáil in 2011 were basically on the cliff and
Mm,
facing oblivion, and that's a fact.
yeah.
There's no. They were almost railroaded out of it.
Mm.
To come back now to 48 seats, which is likely now. By the way, they only got a couple of percentage, or less than a couple of percentage points more than Fine Gael this time, and yet they're going to have 10 seats more, which is unbelievable. But those are the vagaries of the PR system.
Well, some people I think, might say, look at this and say, this is hopeless. It's just not working. I mean, if were not either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, you might say it's pointless. Or say you were a Sinn Féin voter, you might say, look,
Yeah.
we've tried this twice, and these guys freeze us out every time, and we're going backwards rather than forward, and just it's a mess. We can't. What are we to do now? So you tell me, if you're an advisor to Sinn Féin, what would you say they should do now?
Yeah, right. Okay, they should start building coalitions. So let's get this clear, Jude. In the last government, in the last Parliament, Doyle, Sinn Féin did not reach out very much to the other left-wing parties, and that's fact. I
Hmm.
think Sinn Féin got arrogant because they were suddenly saw they thought, come the next election, we're going to eat you guys all up because we're going to be the biggest party and so on. And it was only in this last when the polls started. So maybe there's a lesson in arrogance there. Maybe they should start building alliance with the Labour Party, Social Democrats, people before profit. Hey,
Hmm.
by the way, the thought occurred to me, and it's so insane. I thought, shut away into government for Sinn Féin. Do a deal with Fine Gael. Because Simon Harris and Mary Lou McDonald got together. They could put the crutches totally away from Fianna Fáil.
Well, it could, but I mean, 7 hours apart. You see,
I
Micheál
know it's
Martin
not going to
said, "What
happen,
a
but
ridiculous question."
someone, Micheál Martin has totally ruled out Fianna Fáil.
Aye, aye, but so
Simon
would Fine
Harris,
Gael. So
Finny,
Fine. So how would you
not as
persuade
much.
them? How
No,
would
Jude, I know it's but the thought occurred to me. I was driving up this morning. I thought,
you?
someone. All it needs is Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil to fall out with each other, and then they need somebody else.
Well, of course, there have been instances. We talked about this too. The Progressive Democrats went in
Yeah,
with Charlie Haughey,
Charlie Hoy. Yeah,
and there was no problem.
and they hated each other.
Wasn't it Albert that said, "Oh yeah, it's just a temporary little arrangement"? So
Yeah.
anything's possible. Here's a couple of questions. One is, do you think that Sinn Féin's failure, and it is a failure, they didn't manage to arrive at a position where they could maybe deliver a government? Uh, do you think they're muted? I call it muted success. Their muted success. Does that set back the vision of a border poll?
It does to an extent, yeah, it does. You can't argue that, because let's be honest, neither Fine Gael nor Fianna Fáil have got the same commitment to our border poll as Sinn Féin has. In fact, Micheál Martin is running away from it every which way he can.
Yeah.
Uh, 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 Leo Varadkar and Simon Coveney actually were much more solid on that whole question than either Simon Harris or Micheál Martin.
Yeah,
So
those
I
were
think we're
well, those
going
were
back.
well,
We're
those
going
were
backwards slightly on the border poll. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Leo Varadkar, as he was leaving, said it had to be a strategy should be devised, and this, that, and the other thing should happen. But we didn't hear anything. Did you hear anything of that from Simon Harris during the election campaign?
not at all. No. But here's the point, okay, I think you're being a wee bit negative here, in the sense that Sinn Féin are now a consolidated party of one of the three big parties in the state.
Mm,
That's a
mm,
fact. That's
mm,
the
mm.
second election. They had specific problems this time. And by the way, they're also a party that needs to get their in-house housekeeping and order. There was a
Mm.
lot of things went on the last time, like the Brian Stanley thing, the various other sort of wee scandals that in the last, all that sort of built up against them. And as well as that, Jude, they've got to get rid of some of the, and I'm saying this in a sort of a nice way, some of the northern attitudes down south. For years they were a party. I remember Martin McGuinness one time asked, he says, "Jesus, Martin, do people never go off message?" He says, "Pat, this is in the north." He says, "If we as much as if one person says something that doesn't accord with what the other people are saying," he says, "we get hammered right, left, and centre."
Mhm.
Now down south, there has to be a wee bit more flexibility and that sort of thing that people can argue and disagree, and the party shouldn't come down on them like a ton of bricks.
Well, I see, I would sort of agree with you, but on the other hand, if you have somebody in Sinn Féin speaking out and expressing a different point of view from the official line, the media in the South would just jump on that and they would say, oh, the Stalinist grip has been loosened. The Sinn Féin's in disarray. One of their party says this and the official
But you,
line is that.
but look at someone like Pater Tobin, who I
Mm.
thought was an excellent, and he had a view on abortion.
Hmm.
I thought the party should have been broad enough to accommodate him on that.
Mm.
As a party, look, Pater it's a moral issue. Pater's got a position on it. We as a party say fair enough, but as a party, our party position is this.
I agree with
What's
you.
the
I
big
agree
deal
with
here?
you. I mean, whenever they in the House of Commons recently, when they had the voting on the assisted
Mm,
dying thing,
mm.
they give a free vote. And why the hell Sinn Féin didn't give a free vote for abortion, I just do not know. Although I don't know that that has really damaged them. The vast majority of people seem to be going along with that. Okay, let's move to one of the most interesting candidates of the entire election who didn't get elected, Gerard Hutch. Why do you think he ran, and what did you think of his running?
Dude, I don't know. I watched the interview with him last night on RT, and it was the rarest interview I think I've ever seen. He was talking to the media until Paul Reynolds from RT showed up, and then suddenly you saw Paul Reynolds, and he took off like a rocket. And something, dude, I think there's a inner city Dublin. There are the drugs issues, the poverty issues, the no, there's a lot of gangsters and crime and all that. And dude, I think people there are basically putting a middle finger up to the establishment
Mm,
by voting for people like Hutch. And the
mm.
other, dude, remember the what do you call the guy? I can't remember the drug dealer in Colombia who used to go around handing out money and so on. He was an absolute gangster of the worst. But the people loved it. There's this Robin Hood thing of
Uh,
a lot of drug dealers and crime gangs and all the rest.
yeah,
The people locally, if a wee Mrs. Doherty down the road is in trouble, the local gangster goes down and says, "Look, there's 50 quid. Look, buy
yeah,
yourself
yeah,
a
yeah,
loaf
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever," that sort of stuff. You know what I'm getting at?
Uh,
There's a lot of that sort of stuff. And I think there's also this thing, Jude. Why are so many people voting for sort of complete gobshites this last week? Like Trump is a gobshite no matter what way you come at him.
uh-huh.
Boris Johnson was an absolute arsehole as well. And you look across the world, I don't know what, Jude, stage we wanted our leaders to be heroic, intelligent, moderate, decent people.
Uh.
It seems now that the bigger scumbag you are, the better chances. He's a lovable rogue. He's not. He's a
Did your thinking about him change at all after seeing him and listening to him in a public sphere? Because I personally have never seen him talking before, but there he was
no.
with his hair coiffed nicely and talking to the media or talking at the media, and and at one point raising his phone and photographing
Yeah.
all the journalists around. Or did you think more fondly of him, or did you think more badly of him, or what?
It's a considerably more badly of him. But Jude,
Really?
I don't like this sort of thug thing. Like Jude, he had nothing to offer. He had nothing to say. When he was asked a couple of times, "What?" I said, "I want
But
to bring the
change,
people change."
change, change,
Yeah, what
change, change.
change?
Yeah.
I mean, Jude, I heard a guy on the local radio this morning. He says he told I don't know what his name was. I just caught the tail end of it. He says he wants Ireland out of the EU, and he wants a Donald Trump type Taoiseach, somebody will put Ireland first, and so on. All of the rest of it. And yeah, in fairness to the presenter guy called Greg Hughes, Greg says, right, okay, tell me something. If we look at Britain, and he says Britain is far bigger than us, and there's 60 million people, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Right? Do we sell our fish to if we're outside the EU? Where do we sell our meat to?
Mm.
Where do we do our exports to? Say we are hitting tariffs right, left, and centre from
Yeah.
the EU and from America and so on. Jude, some people come out with stupid things, right, Jude? From one of my economic classes when I was doing my leaving cert, I remember in the late 60s, early 70s, before we joined the EC as it was then,
Yeah.
83% of our exports went to the UK. And they could control, that was agriculture, by the way, and they could control our prices because we had no alternative markets. Now,
Yeah.
do we want to go back to that? Now, by the way, there's so much about the EU and that I don't like, but hey, let's get real here.
Yeah, I agree completely. Agree completely. I think we should be critical of the EU, and we have to face the fact that you do lose a degree of sovereignty whenever you join and
Mm.
go along with the EU. But the benefits of cooperating with the people who are your neighbours in Europe are immense, and we've seen
Yeah.
that. There's a lot of warning about how, the storm clouds were coming, and I think they were using it. I was talking to a woman yesterday, and she had voted for Fine Gael and for Into. And she thought the idea of Sinn Féin in office was sort of handing what would you call it, handing the family gun to the 12-year-old. And now she didn't
Yeah.
say that, but that it would be handing the
I get
job
the
of government into
analogy. Yeah.
people's
Yeah. Yeah.
hands who don't know, who've never experienced it and who don't really know how to do it. Do you think that that'd be widespread in the South?
Yeah, absolutely, Jude. I get it all the time. And by the way, it's perpetuated by the media as well. They're this sort of thing that every Sinn Féin supporter as a violent lover, a IRA supporter,
Yeah.
thug, and all the rest of it. And Jude, what they don't seem to ever sort of say is there was a unique a unique set of circumstances in the North that created a sort of a vacuum where people felt the need to some way oppose the state. Now, some of it definitely got out of hand, but it was totally legitimate in my opinion. I have no doubt about that. I am not supporting the violence, but protest against the state. When people took the streets, they were battened off it by the RUC,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was the UDR, there was the B specials, there was a 93% police force that was Protestant and Unionist, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So let's stop all that. And our as obligation that the people in the north who now vote Sinn Féin in great numbers, is every one of them some sort of thug and all the rest of it? Dude,
Mm-hmm.
the world has changed.
Uh, well, I was thinking that, when you mentioned Hutch and the fact that if you've seen the media scrum to get at him, to
Yeah,
get him to say something, well, you saw it, I'm sure. It was
yeah,
unbelievable.
change.
And you
Mm.
said that it was a sort of a Robin Hood figure they're presenting him as. Now, I watched, I can never remember her name, but she's married to a guy, that guy, Anton Savage. I think he's her son.
Yeah,
Um,
Terry Prone.
Terry Prone, yes, the PR woman. She viewed, or the people with her in the studio viewed the Healy Rays, Michael Healy Ray, or whatever his name is,
And
talking.
Danny Healy Ray.
Aye, and she was very complimentary. She said, you may not like what this guy is saying, you may not like his whole policies, his whole approach, uh, but he is one terrific communicator. She
Yep.
said, you can't look away from the screen when that guy's talking. And
Yeah,
I was thinking maybe there is a connection between them and Hutch in this sense that both of them talk very differently and cut very different type of figure
yeah.
from physically on the screen than do any of the other politicians. And for many people that's a relief. So
Mm.
it's a real strength of the Hilly Rays that the way these daft caps and that the way they talk and the
Absolutely.
British
Yeah,
accent and all the rest. You think?
yeah. Jude, that Trump's the same. Trump does not. Jude, right? The normal stereotype, prototype politician is the guy with the slick hair, the suit and tie, who spouts out all the right thing and says all the right thing. And suddenly along comes a guy who, has had more affairs than you can shake a stick at,
And I've had
who's
hot
done
dinners.
dodgy deals than I've had hot dinners, exactly. who has got a sort of strange personality, who doesn't come out. Look at the Healy Rays. One wears a cap and a sort of tie that just loose. The other boy doesn't wear a tie and he wears a white shirt. And you think he's just coming in from the farm and so on. And when they're on, and the other Terry Prone actually made a very good point as well. She says Michael Healy Ray. She says he's one of the few politicians that uses humor during interviews.
That's
She
right.
says
That's a
it
good
could.
one.
Yeah,
Hmm.
she says, when somebody asks him a question, he can usually answers it back with a smart ass, a
Hmm.
bit of humor, so
Hmm.
on. So she's dead right. Suddenly, like everybody can sneer and smear and whatever at the Healy Rays, but by God, and by the way, do this thing too. They are very, very clever. They're coming across almost as gone bean men,
Hmm.
and so on.
And
But
ordinary people.
as ordinary people, but Jude, as far as I know, they are seriously wealthy.
Yeah, yeah. So it's quite a good trick.
Yeah.
I did you catch by any chance, Pat? Now this is going back a week or two, where Sinn Féin's what's his name again? Was interviewed by Mark Carruthers. He's the Minister for Infrastructure. Um, John
Oh, John O'Dowd.
O'Dowd. Did you see that?
No, I don't know what you're
There's an
referring to.
interview. Well, I had an interview with him, and
Yeah.
Mark Carruthers was putting him under pressure about I don't know what it was that the lines he was selling and what was he going to do and this, that, and the other.
Mm.
But the point of it is that O'Dowd uh, responded in such a way was amazing. He was totally cool. He seemed mildly amused by the questions and the attitude that Carruthers was taking because Carruthers was being very fiery for him. Uh, and there's no doubt about it that at the end of 10 minutes, it looked like O'Dowd had really been hammering Mark Carruthers rather than the
Brothers,
other
yeah.
way around. I just think
Yeah.
he's a good example of a politician. And I remember talking to him one time, and he said, "Well, I go to any training sessions that are on all parties of these training sessions for their
Yeah, yeah.
politicians." And he says, "I go to them all." And by God, it's paying off for him. Are you as impressed by
Yeah.
him in terms of his appearance and uh,
He's a big man. He's about 6'6" and so on.
that should
And
be a
he's always
disadvantage, like in a way, because
yeah,
he's sort of lumbering looking. I mean, he's not the best looking
yeah.
guy in the world, but uh,
No, but he's always very cool and
yeah,
composed when he's doing the interviews, and I like that about him. And he rarely gets flustered. But sure, you never seen Jerry Adams getting flustered either.
that's right.
Jude, one of the iconic moments of TV in the last half century was the Gay Byrne interview with Jerry Adams,
Mm.
and Adams won that hands down by staying cool, calm, composed, and all the rest of
That's true. That's true. And then maybe Dowd's modeling himself on that.
it.
Okay, now we're running out of time, but there's one last thing here. There's an article which I think is in Irish Times today, where they say that Irish people all over the place, small towns, big towns, cities, and so on, believe that illicit drugs are a serious problem in their local area. And this is far higher than is the case throughout the EU. If you go to a town or a village or a
Yeah.
city, even anywhere in Europe, you'll not find people believing that drugs are a problem to the degree which they are in the south of Ireland. 58% of adults says they believe illicit drugs are a serious problem in their area, and that's the second highest rate of all 27 EU members. Can you believe
And
that, Pat?
Junior, something I was surprised. I have three sons. The
Hmm.
youngest guy is in his 30s now, and he says to me, Dad, he says, drugs are now the new sort of alcohol. He says you can get drugs anywhere. He says I've heard, he says basically, and he says it is a real issue. He says as far as he can see, he says, he said basically what seems to be. No, years ago when you drunk 4 or 5 pints of Guinness, got a big belly and all that.
Aye.
Apparently, all these young fellas who are going to the gym now take a wee sniff of cocaine and so on because you get the same high, but you don't put on the weight and you look good and you run around with your shirts out
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all this sort of stuff. And he says and so on, and it's sort of a social thing. And he
Hmm.
says, he says that he told me, he says his understanding of from some of his friends and people that he knows and the younger generation. He says even I am a wee bit out of that generation now because I'm married and have three kids and I don't know as much about it.
Mm.
But he says, I've been told that you can get drugs in any corner of any street and Donegal, and this is the rural, isolated part of Ireland.
Well, listen, if the people are doing that and the young fellas are taking cocaine, say, rather than a pint or pints, is
Yeah.
it doing them any harm? Or, I mean,
Oh,
is this
well,
not just
Jude,
another thing in society?
I don't know. I remember years ago, I had a friend of mine who was a very respectable man, and he used to smoke his wacky backy, and I think he used to take a odd snort. He claimed, Pat, what's the difference between you going out and having 4 or 5 pints and me doing this? And I couldn't argue. The only thing is, it's a totally illegal trade, and a lot of people are getting very rich on it. And Jude, let's be honest, I don't think, when you take drunk, alcohol, you fall down drunk.
Mm.
I think a lot of people will never see you taking cocaine, and it's become a major social issue. It's a major criminal issue, and it's a major, in the sense that Jesus should destroy societies. No doubt about that.
Well, I think, well, I'm wondering about it because you've mentioned these guys, young guys, they're going to the gym and so on, and it doesn't seem to
Yeah,
have disrupted their lives. I don't believe that cannabis is a real problem. I mean, it is a problem because it's criminalized. I think it should be decriminalized and sold by the government. Think about the money.
yeah. No,
Uh,
there's an element of truth. Sure. By the way, how long have we got left?
we've got another 5.
Right here.
That doesn't mean we can't leave early.
Can
If you want to leave early,
I,
Pat, if you want to leave early, you
no,
just
no,
walk
no.
it.
Here, no,
Don't
no,
let the
no, no,
door
no.
hit your
Here's the
arse.
question. I know. Here's the question for you. Remember years ago back, do they know it's Christmas? Was the
Oh,
number
yes,
one
that was,
song?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yes, right. Rasmussen, our former esteemed president, and now one of the elders, and so on, and Ed Sheeran, the famous red-haired pop star, are
Hmm.
both sort of distancing themselves from the record. They
Yeah.
said it's become sort of patronizing, and the fact that there's a bit of the white savior. In other words, these white liberals coming to save Africa and so on.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
your view of that song?
Well, I have to struggle because I really can't stand your man, the Boomtown Rat lad. He gets on my
Geldof?
nerves. Hmm?
Yeah,
What's his
Bob
name?
Geldof.
Geldof.
Bob Geldof.
Sir Bob Geldof. I find him a pain. But on the other hand, I remember so well when that was a hit, and that there really was a huge surge of, I felt it, a huge surge of optimism that the developed world would now look at these countries that are only emerging and help them. And it was the scenes in Ethiopia were just awful. They were like the
Absolutely.
same pain you felt with Gaza now, only, it was just hunger. These were people who are dying of hunger. So they
Yeah.
raised a lot of money, and Geldof did it in a very disrespectful way, which again was, counterintuitive, as they say. He's like the monk
Yeah.
or like the Hilly Rays, cutting through to people and say, "Give us your effing money." So uh, I would find it hard to argue that they didn't do good. They must have saved quite a
Yeah.
few lives with that. On the other hand, I know exactly what they're saying when they say we kind of look down on Africa and emerging countries. We have this notion of these people as being primitive to some degree and underdeveloped and living probably in houses that are made of mud and wattle and clay and stuff.
Yeah.
And that just isn't the way Africa is. And it's also insulting for people who are African or whatever part of Africa they come from. So I applaud what happened then, but by God, they're dead right when people say, time we had a look at this. I think maybe
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran and President Mary Robinson were a wee bit excessive when they said, we'd sort of cut old ties with, don't they know it's Christmas? And they said, I read an article that said the line, don't they know it's Christmas time at all, that was very patronizing. I don't think it was meant as patronizing. Do you?
Yeah. No,
Did you
no,
think that?
but here's the thing. I suppose two things can be sort of right at the same time.
Hmm.
It might be patronizing, but they also think it raised a hell of a lot of money. And one thing you have to give Geldof, I think it's raised 170 million. He
Hmm.
says it provided a lot of food and kept a lot of children alive. So
Aye.
two things can be right at the same time.
Aye.
So
But but my question, Pat, to you is: did you think at the time that's a patronizing line? That's an embarrassing
no,
line.
no, I
Do
didn't.
they know it's
But
Christmas?
not at the time, Jude. Definitely not. But
No,
I
no,
see
I
there's a rapper called Fuse ODG. I've never heard of him, by the way. So
no,
no point.
I,
You know,
Yeah.
But he says it dehumanizes Africans and sort of and destroys their self-respect. I think that's slightly over the top.
Uh-huh.
And it was, someone should see if something as well meant and delivers, which
Mm.
this song did. Not that I found that brilliant song or anything.
Oh, I
It's
loved
a
it.
wee
I
bit
loved
sort of,
it. I thought it was a very good
yeah, but
song.
it's all right. Like I'm not saying it was
Get away with
anything
that.
wrong with
Great.
it.
Yeah.
No, but it wasn't the greatest song of all time or anything. But
No,
that did what it did what it was supposed to do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes I think you can, the old one my dad used to say, "Be careful about biting the hand that feeds you."
That's right. And if you stop to think about it, there's a parallel between that and the black babies. Sure, we were
Yeah,
told to bring our pennies in for the black babies. And of course, that
yeah,
was a patronizing thing. But at the time, we didn't think about it that way. We thought we were helping these black babies that might be starving to death and stuff with our
yeah,
pennies. So it's all got to do with looking back at the past and applying the sort of mores and the morals and
yeah.
attitudes of today. And that really isn't,
Yeah.
that isn't fair. I don't think that's fair. Okay, Pat. I think so much
On
in the
that
world
note,
is unfair, and I think the next election you and I will both run. Okay?
run.
And
Yeah,
we'll have a
yeah.
new
On
way
that
of
note.
talking to the electorate, and we'll say, if any of you guys step out of line, you'll be in trouble. Now ask me easy questions.
On that note,
Okay, Pat. All the best.
bye, Jude.